Guruve Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha Panchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaivacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Dhanyavad Pranam devotees. So I have gotten to the last couple of questions finally that were backed up, and it's a good thing because tomorrow I was not going to be available for the question and answer session here. So it was very good. So 2 questions were there. One question was from a devotee who's a mature devotee. So I don't really have reservations about answering that devotee's questions to the best of my understanding of what I've gleaned from Guru Sadhu and Sastra. And it's about, his question was, it was simple. How does the siddha deha come? Siddha deha means the spiritual body. And then the last question was a devotee asking for an elaboration on an explanation. I spoke about potential, that there's a potential that's inherent in the Bada Jiva. And he wanted a further explanation of that potential. So let's start with the first question, which was, how does the siddha deha come? So our acharyas, all the way from Srila Jiva Goswami Pad, actually to Sanatana Goswami Pad, Srila Rupa Goswami Pad, Srila Jiva Goswami Pad, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, my Guru Parapadma, all have explained the same thing in that regard. That, and when we get to potential, I'll explain potentiality and the siddha swarupa of a jiva. So first of all, it's important to understand that when we hear the word siddha deha, it means the spiritual body. So the spiritual body, it is a manifestation of Swarup Shakti. So Swarup Shakti means the internal energy of the Lord. The body itself is composed of Sandhini Shakti. It is imbued with 2 potencies, Samvit and Aladini, right? The cognizance potency and the bliss-giving potency. That potency gives happiness to Sri Krishna and also to the jiva who's experiencing the relationship with Krishna. Right, that's the Ladini potency, and the Samvit potency creates cognizance of the relationship with Krishna. So this is the essential makeup of the spiritual body, the actual spiritual body. And when I speak about potential, I'll speak about the fact that every time we hear the word Swarup, it does not mean Siddha Swarup in relation to the path of Rag Marg and a Siddha Deha, meaning a perfected spiritual body, which is the results of what I'm about to describe. So all of our acharyas have also described that over the course of the time that we have turned towards the path of bhakti, because I'm speaking strictly in the manner of the sajja of Raganuga Bhakti, right? And the manifestation of a siddha deha in that regard. So our acharyas have explained from the time that Shraddha entered the heart, first Adho Shraddha, right? There was some contact with the prabhav or influence of a sadhu. We may have heard their Harikatha, we may have gotten a book, we may have done some Agyata Sukriti in relation to a sadhu or the mission of a sadhu. Like many people serve our Srila Prabhupada's mission by giving a donation or something else, getting a book, getting some prasad. So in some way or another, that led to the development of faith, Shraddha. And Shraddha Anupani Bharajam, Bhakti Unmukhi Chitta Vritti Vistage. The functions of our consciousness, our chitta, which had been dominated by the influence of the modes of nature and an external attraction to the material world, had under the influence of Shraddha turned towards the mood of trying to serve Krishna. So once that took place in incremental unfoldments through first the appreciation of sadhu sangha, and therefore the need to understand Guru Padasraya, Tata Diksha Shikshadi, and eventually and hopefully Vishrambena Guru Seva. Give me 1 second, I just have to attend to something and I'll be right back. Okay, so that was unusual. Very seldom happens. Okay, so in following those things, Guru Parasraya, Diksha, Shikshadi, and then coming to Vishrambena Guru Seva, then instructions on the basic practices of bhajan life can begin, bhajana kriya, right? So this means following the outline of what, if anybody's familiar with our practice, has been doing for, however many years you've been involved in Krishna consciousness. So following that process, following that path of activity, and hopefully developing some internal depth in that practice, gradually the anarthas, which are the unwanted elements blocking our progress, are removed. And then nishta nischalaya yashaha iti nishta. Then eventually the chitta becomes nishta. And here nishta means nischalaya, means it's not flickering or vacillating between material interest and spiritual interest, and it's not being bombarded by the modes of nature, but rather there's a steadiness, a calmness, a placidness to the chitta. When that happens, one can really truly appreciate the bhajan practice that we've been doing. So, tatad bhavadi madhure shruti dirapekshate nasa sastana yuktingscha ta lobat utpatti lakshanam. So a ruchi arises in the bhajan practice, especially nam bhajan, appreciating Harinam. And in that sense, then the quality and quantity of one's chanting increases. Hearing Harikatha, one develops a great appreciation for hearing Harikatha. These things, when they reach their perfected stage, are described as the lakshan, or qualities of that stage, like the stage of Bhav. Kshantira vyaktakala virakti manasuyata ashabandha sumutkanta namaganai sararuchi ashakti stad gunakyane. So one develops namaganai sararuchi, very great taste in Harinam and attachment to hearing Harikatha. So those very same things in a lesser degree, so to speak, appear in ruchi. So there's great attachment to bhajan life. From that intensity of bhajan life arises organically and naturally the object of your bhajan. So it's proda paramatma saiti bhajaniyam. Right? So from the practice of the intensified practice in bhajan, the attachment, asakti, to the object of the bhajan, bhajaniyam, takes place. So in this stage of asakti, what happens is that now the deep attachment gives rise to a particular mode of service. So Srila Jiva Goswami has explained this, Tatya Tadrisa Sudakaraka Bhasa Samalasita Ridoes Bhaktika Mani Shastra Adi Shruteshu Atadrisa Ragatmakaya Bhakti Paripatishu Ati Ruchi Jayate. So in Bhakti Shandarbha, he's described this process, maybe it's Anushad 3, somewhere between 308 and 310, maybe 310. He's described this process that an abbas comes onto the chitta. The abbas means like a shadow of the mood of a particular eternal associate, right? Ragatmakaya Bhakta. So a eternal associate, one of the Ragatmik Jan, their particular mood, for instance, the mood of Rupa Manjari. An abbas of the kind of service done by Rupa Manjari comes onto the chitta, and great taste and relish arises in that mode of service. At that time, the guru, he can do what is called ruchi pariksha. Ruchi pariksha means that Sri Guru can then examine the mood of the disciple and confirm and affirm that mood. At that point, my Guru Pada Padma says, is when your rasa becomes fixed. in terms of you realizing it. So because there's many ideas that the rasa is already present and it's fixed and it's predetermined and so forth. So that's a whole nother discussion. But here, my Guru Padapadma has clearly said, in this stage, he calls it mature lobe, then the rasa becomes fixed in the heart of that jiva, and the jiva understands it, right? So the idea that it's already there, and it's, but if you have not realized that, that's sort of, we could take that in many ways. But the point being here that now it's realized, though bhav avas, or the stage of bhav and the descent of Swarup Shakti has not fully taken place yet, the abhas has come on the chitta. And now it's clear to that aspirant, right, that practitioner, that this is the taste for which I eternally want to serve Krishna. Also, sometimes it's asked whether or not everything is strictly based on our desire, or is there some input from Krishna. So I explained in another video that there's an intersection of both. Because obviously the devotee doesn't have the idea, well, it's all about what I want, right? Because anukulena Krishna anusilanam. And though Krishna reciprocates with all kinds of desires of how people want to serve, all the way to kubja, right? It does not mean that the highest degree of pure bhakti is not present in that person who has the mood of what mood has entered my heart is also Krishna's desire for that type of service. Right? I heard very elevated Vaishnavas explain this in a very nice example that I explained on a previous tape. So there is an intersection between Krishna's desire to taste a certain service and also the unfoldment organically of that desire in the jiva to render that type of service. So there's a wonderful, amazing intersection of the two things. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has described this process that I just talked about, Ruchi Pariksha, in Chaitanya Shikshamrita, right? That means when a person takes interest in the path of Raganuga Shadan, right? Which is the only means to obtain this Braj Bhav. By Vaidhi Bhakti, of course, it's mentioned Sakale Jagate, More Vaidhi Bhakti Braj Bhav, Paitino Isakti. Right? You cannot obtain the moods of Braj by the performance of Vaidhi Bhakti. Though we follow Vidhi, means rules and regulations, they are in pursuit of the practice of Rag Marg. They're not in pursuit of the goal of Vaidhi Bhakti, which is Vaikuntha. So, Sadaketa kon Raganuga Maglo Boy, Tokon Sadguru Nikata, Pratana Korile Tini. So here it's mentioning Shri Guru Nikata Pratana Korile. So it says when a person develops interest in this Rag Marg, then they should come close to Guru. Right? They should, of course, you already should have Sadguru, but you'll come close to your Sadguru Nikata and humbly, Pratana Korile, inquire from Shri Guru about your mood. Tine Sarakya Ruchi Pariksha. Then Shri Guru will do Ruchi Pariksha. He will examine the nature of your Ruchi. We see this in the case of Brajanath and Vijay Kumar in Jaiva Dharma, where Srila Gopal Guru Goswami, when they came of maturation in their Ruchi, he did this Ruchi Pariksha. He examined, oh, what is it that you have attraction to? And what is it that you have attraction to? As it turns out, in their maturation of their Ruchi, one had attraction for Sakyarasa and one had attraction for Madhujya, right? So, this is called Ruchi Pariksha. Then Sri Gurudev, Koriye Tahar Bhajan Nirnoy. He will then give instructions how to do bhajan to crystallize that particular mood which has now become situated in the chitta of the jiva. Right? Then, Shange Shiradehe Parichaya Koriye Diven. And he will acquaint the devotee with his siddha deha. So here, it does not mean that Sri Guru has given the siddha deha. Sri Gurudev is the embodiment of Swarup Shakti. And Srila Gurudev's instructions in bhajan, their harikatha, the seva you render to them, all is what imbues the jiva with Swarup Shakti. So now, Gurudev has also explained that whenever you see the shadow of something, and I've explained this many times, so this is a repeat, right? When the shadow of something is present, it indicates that the substance casting that shadow is also nearby. So when this abhas of the Ragatmik Jan appears on the chitta, it is indicative that Swarup Shakti itself is nearby. And the jiva, having come to the stage of a Shakti, their own, because two things are required for bhakti, right? And was demonstrated in the Damodar Bandhan Lila. One is the endeavor. Mother Yashoda created great endeavor to bind Krishna. Also, Krishna's mercy is necessary. So the stage of a Shakti is the point at which the endeavors of the sadhak have reached the zenith, right? And only now, lalas, longing, kada, when, kabe, when will this happen? And then the mercy of Krishna will descend in the form, and here Krishna means Bhakti Devi, Krishna Shakti, Shrimati Radhika. Bhakti Devi will descend through the Sattva Visheshatma Prem Sriyamsa Samyabha Ruchi Vish Chittam Asrinya Kriso Babuchite. So I've explained this before as well, so not to elongate this tape, I'm not going to explain this all over again. So when that Swarup Shakti descends, it melts the chitta by the taste that you've acquired in a particular mode of service. So the melting of the chitta is essentially the melting of the Linga Sharira and its effect on the Stula Sharira. It means the subtle body and the gross body. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur has also spoken about this. I'm just reading a section of this particular, well, I'll start from the beginning. So Shravan Kirtanadi Sadhana Shamai Yala Shuddha Bhakti Udati. When one continuously performs the angas of bhakti and finally Shuddha Bhakti arises, Tadasavasya Vidyatvam Parihitya. So Vidyaya Chirektara Vitrishna Janani. So any trishna or any taste you've had in anything other than the service of Krishna is removed by the influence of the Samvit Shakti. When it gives a rising in the heart of the knowledge of Krishna, it removes any idea of interest in anything else, because this is the all-consuming nature of the Nam, Rup, Gun, Parikar, Lila, etc. of Krishna. Right? It removes any other desire. Then Jivasha Shtula Lingamaya Sho or Upadika. The upadis that we've acquired in the form of a subtle and gross body, deha, dvayam, these two, vinashaya, they're completely removed or destroyed. Right? Then tasya surup gata surachitta deham. Then that siddha deha that you're asking about, that's when it appears. And according to adhikara bhedena madhujya rasa ashwadan, if your ruchi, your adhikar means like if your ruchi has matured to the point where the taste is in rasa shwadan madhujya ras, yatanam gopika deham api prakatyati. Then the form of a gopi will manifest. That's what your siddha deha will be. So here from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, non-different from descriptions given by Srila Jiva Goswami and also by my Guru Parapadma, I've heard this exact same thing, right? This is how the siddha deha comes about. Now to go on to the next question, which will also answer some questions regarding the idea of all of these things being currently present in the Atma, etc. of the Jiva in a unmanifest, dormant, or latent way. I've already explained that ad nauseum, so I'm really not going to elongate it, but I am going to explain what is potential. And from that explanation, you'll be able to understand this idea of how it is present in potential. So, the devotee asked me to elaborate on what I meant by potential. So I've already explained one point is that spiritual potentiality is not the same as material potentiality. Material potentiality may go unfulfilled because it's relative. It is not an absolute fact. But spiritual potentiality is based on the constitutional relationship that we have with Krishna. Jiversu Poya Krishna Nichadas. Das Bhuti Harieva Nanyasha Karatchana. Right? Paramamayka Seshitwa. So from Jiva Goswami to Srila Baladevi Jabushin, which is, they're all quoting Chandogya Upanishad in this other statement, right? To Mahaprabhu's statement himself, all have stated that the jiva has a constitutional relationship with Krishna in the form of worshiper, and the worshipped, or the servant and the master, right? You can couch it in so many different ways, but there's an eternal bond based on that. The generic potential is there in every jiva because of that to develop that relationship. Every jiva has that generic potential to develop that relationship. That generic potential becomes activated potential, right? When the jiva takes to the path of some kind of spiritual unfoldment. Here, I'm not even speaking about exclusively bhakti, right? Because everyone, no matter what condition you're in, right, is the servant of Krishna, whether you're conscious of it or not. So if you're Bada Jiva, it does not remove the fact that you're a servant of Krishna. Mamam vamso jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. Manakstak indriyani prakriti stanikashiti. In fact, there is a unconscious seva that goes on even by the Bada Jivas in the maintenance of the Srishti Lila. Right? Their own karma and all these other things is part of what maintains the Srishti Lila of Bhagavan. So there is a unconscious seva that's done by everybody, right? Whether you're realized or not, right? So you cannot remove the status of being Dasoshmi, the servant of Krishna. The question is if you're conscious of it or not. So when one takes to any spiritual practice, then that generic dasitva takes on an activated form, because now somebody's trying to conclude how they are the servant of Krishna, or understand how they're the servant of Krishna. When there is the presence of self-interest, however, the cloud of that self-interest obfuscates the clear view of the highest form of service of Krishna and presents to that jiva a means of how to get free from their suffering and be able to recognize that though they're not part of the material world, they are a spiritual entity. So that is a step in the activation of a specific potential in understanding I'm not the body, but I'm the soul. So those are persons who may take to the path of Gyan, and they may come to realize that I am not this body, and they will experience Atma Ananda. They'll taste the result of being the Atma, and in the Atma there's a natural condition of bliss, which is the part of being Dukkha Pratiyogita. It means being free from any kind of misery that was presented by the material world, and Rasam Eva Labdha Nandi Bhavati, and the potentiality of the development of unlimited forms of bliss. That is presented in the Atma upon Atma Ananda. Those who develop the desire to merge into the existence of the absolute truth, Sayuja Mukti, they will in their path realize as the goal Brahmananda, in which they will then be merged into the effulgence of the body of Krishna. And in that Brahma Ananda, they will taste also a kind of Ananda, but there's some self-interest there, right? Again, in further development, it will come to recognizing Paramatma, right? In further development, it will come to a desire to serve Paramatma. So the introduction of Dasatwa in an activative way. Then it may come to a desire to serve beyond the mode of Aishwarya, in which the moods of Braj may become present, right? And then in the moods of Braj, various degrees of and varieties of rasas in relation to serving Bhagavan in the form of Swayam Bhagavan Sri Krishna, or Vrindanandan Sri Krishna. So that potential becomes activated, and then upon, especially in Raganuga Marg, on the path of Bhakti as given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when we accept Diksha, we accept specificity in that activated potential. In other words, a particular focus is given at the time of Diksha. It is called Sambandha Gyan. And if the devotee has become somewhat mature, the resonance with that Sambandha Gyan becomes the specific mode that will develop into the actual taste they will experience at the time of Ruchi. But Srila Gurudeva said it could still be that during their sadhan kal, means during the time of doing sadhan, and their Ruchi has not become completely mature. Like with Gopal, Guru Goswami, Brajanath and Vijay Kumar, it may be that the specificity of the ruchi which attracts them as they become mature may still vary, like in Sakyaras or in Madhujaras. Right? So, in this way, potentiality goes from generic to activated potential in pursuit of their spiritual identity to very specific activated potential to, in maturation, pinpointed potential that only awaits the fulfillment by the descent of Swarup Shakti to crystallize. You understand? Now, again, our Srila Guru Padma and our Guru Vargas have mentioned that potentiality is an eternal reality with the jiva, whether they're bound or not. So that potentiality is always there. And our Guru Padma and our Guru Vargas have spoken like that. That the jiva, his name, form, mode of service, everything exists in an unmanifest, dormant, or latent state, synonyms for potentiality in the jiva, even in the stage of bondage. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has also brought that out very clearly. Now, another thing that we have to recognize is that there is a differentiation between the activated specificity and potentiality that comes from the path of bhakti versus somebody simply realizing the Atma or the soul. It is not that automatically by the removal of Maya, one will discover a Braj Ras in their soul. It will depend. Upasana anushanena date hi bhagavan phalam. In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, right, it's clearly mentioned, according to the upasana that's done, the mode of practice that's done, a particular unfoldment takes place. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur here has just clearly mentioned that if one is practicing bhakti, right, then that unfoldment takes the shape of producing a body according to one's mature adhikar, right? Shravanam kirtanadi, sadhana shamaya. So the result of the practice of the sadhana, even though the mood is not produced by sadhana, because it is a nitya siddha bhava, right? Nitya siddha shabhavacha prakritamriti sadyata. So my Guru Padma and our whole Guru Vargas have mentioned that nitya siddha bhava resides in the ragatmik jan, means in the eternal associates. But when Swarup Shakti descends, that mood descends from them into the heart of the jiva, and their potential and the Atma of the jiva become one. So Guru Dev, I heard a very nice lecture that one of my godbrothers sent to me. It was in Hindi, but there was also translation. But if you understand even a little Hindi, you could understand. The Guru Dev says that the Atma and that Swarup Shakti become taratmik. They become one. So this is also encapsulated in the verse in the first canto Srimad Bhagavatam chapter 6 of Narada Muni's perfection. Prayujamani mai tuam sudim bhagavatim tanum. Rabda karma nirvano anyapatat panchabodhika. That the word prayuj is translated by our Srila Prabhupada, by all the acharyas, as awarded. So, but the word prayuj, if you look it up, also means a complete bonding of two things. Yuj means like yoga, to bind. Prayuj means a complete binding of two things. Right? So there would obviously indicate that Narada Muni received a siddha deha by which his Atma and that thing were one. Right? Because in the material world, you receive two bodies, a subtle body and a gross body, but they have nothing to do with the soul. They're impositions on the soul. Right? The soul never even touches the subtle or gross body. Asangohiyanyam purusha. It does not touch at all. But here the Atma becomes obviously one completely with Swarup Shakti. And that body is a manifestation of that particular bhav, identity, everything regarding a unique spiritual DNA of that Atma. Right? So why have they translated it as awarded? Because without the mercy of Bhagavan, this does not take place. So this prayuj is only manifest by the mercy of Bhagavan. Right? Or Bhakti Devi, meaning Bhaktya Sanjatya Bhaktya. Bhakti comes from Bhakti. Right? So I hopefully I answered the two questions. One was, where does the siddha deha come from? I quoted evidence from Srila Jiva Goswami Pad. Of course, you can look at Rupa Goswami and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He's described the same things from the verse Sudha Sattva Visheshat Mahaprem Siyaksa Samya Bhav. And even going beyond that, he describes the unfoldment to that point of doing sadhana, kriti sajya, bhavet sajya, etc. He's also described how it's unfolded over the course of the life or several lives of a jiva. What is this verse? Praktanak aduniki chasti yashad bhaktivasana. Right? Tam eva rasa aswadya. Tasha eva ridijayate. That over the course of these sanskars from many, many lives, one has come to the point of being able to taste the ashwadan of a particular rasa. Right? Let me see. And of course I explained from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in two separate places the process by which the siddha deha has come along. So one is in his commentary on the first verse of Shishashtakam, right? I think it's related to that. And then the second one, of course, is from Chaitanya Shikshamrita. Right? All right, my Dandavat Pranam devotees. Vancha Kalpaturvisha Kripa Shindavevacha Patitanam Pavaneva Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Radhe Radhe.